In a small, bustling town surrounded by rolling hills and dusty roads, there was a place where the sound of clanging metal and revving engines filled the air. It was a town known for its love of cars. Old, new, fast, and slow. At the heart of this community stood a modest garage called Johnson's Auto Repair, run by Marcus Johnson, a man whose reputation as a mechanic had spread far and wide. People came from neighboring towns just to have their broken-down vehicles fixed by him. He wasn't just good at what he did, he was extraordinary. But more than his skill with tools, Marcus was known for his kindness and willingness to teach anyone who showed interest in learning. Among those eager learners was his daughter, Maya Johnson. From the time she could walk, Maya had been fascinated by the world of engines. While other kids played with dolls or video games, Maya spent her days watching her father work magic under the hood of cars. She learned how to hold a wrench before she even started school, and by the time she was a teenager, she could diagnose engine problems faster than most adults. Her father often said, "Maya, you've got oil running through your veins instead of blood." And though she laughed it off, deep down, she knew it was true. Cars weren't just machines to her. They were puzzles waiting to be solved. But life took an unexpected turn when Marcus passed away suddenly. The loss hit Maya hard. Not only did she lose her father, but the town also lost its beloved mechanic. Many wondered if Johnson's auto repair would survive without Marcus at the helm. Some whispered that it might be best to sell the business, while others assumed it would fade into obscurity. But Maya refused to let that happen. Determined to honor her father's legacy, she decided to take over the garage despite being only 22 years old. At first, people were skeptical. In a field dominated by men, a young woman stepping into such a role was unheard of. Some customers stopped coming, thinking a girl wouldn't know how to handle tough repairs. Others gave her pitying looks, assuming she'd give up soon. Even some of her father's old friends advised her to find another career. "This isn't easy work, Maya," one of them said gently. "You sure you want to do this?" But Maya didn't waver. She worked long hours, pouring sweat and determination into every repair job. Slowly but surely, she began proving herself, earning back the trust of loyal customers and attracting new ones who appreciated her honesty and skill. One sunny afternoon, as Maya loaded boxes of parts into her truck to deliver to one of her father's longtime clients, she found herself driving toward a part of town she rarely visited, the luxury car dealership owned by Mr. Langley. Known for his expensive taste and sharp tongue, Langley was a polarizing figure in the community. He catered to wealthy clients and imported cars so rare they looked like they belonged in museums rather than on roads. Maya had heard stories about him, how he treated employees poorly and dismissed anyone who didn't meet his high standards. Still, her father had always valued professionalism, so Maya approached the task with respect. When she arrived at the gleaming showroom, she couldn't help but feel out of place. Her jeans were stained with grease and her hands still bore traces of oil, while the polished floors and sleek sports cars screamed wealth and perfection. As she handed over the parts to the receptionist, Mr. Langley himself walked in. Dressed in an impeccably tailored suit, he raised an eyebrow at the sight of her. "And who might you be?" he asked, his tone dripping with condescension. "I'm Maya Johnson," she replied calmly, meeting his gaze. "I'm delivering these parts for my dad's account." "Ah, yes," Langley said dismissively. "Marcus's kid. Heard he passed. Sad business." Then after a pause, he added with a smirk, "Must be tough running a garage all by yourself, especially, well, you know." Maya clenched her fists but forced herself to stay composed. "It's not easy," she admitted. "But I'm managing." Langley chuckled, clearly amused. "Managing? That's cute. Tell me, sweetheart, ever worked on anything fancier than a pickup truck?" Before Maya could respond, one of Langley's mechanics interrupted, looking frazzled. "Sir, we're still having trouble with the Ferrari. No one can figure out what's wrong with it." The mention of the Ferrari caught Maya's attention. She'd seen pictures of it, a stunning red supercar worth millions, but she hadn't realized it was here in town. Curious, she asked, "What's wrong with it?" Langley turned to her, his expression mocking. Oh, nothing major. Just an impossible engine problem. Something too complicated for amateurs like you. His words stung, but Maya refused to back down. If it's so impossible, why don't you show me? Maybe I can spot something. For a moment, Langley seemed taken aback by her boldness. Then a sly grin spread across his face. Fine, he said. Go ahead. Take a look. But don't blame me when you embarrass yourself. With that, he led her to the garage, where the Ferrari sat like a jewel on display. The sleek lines of the car were mesmerizing, but Maya's focus quickly shifted to the open hood. Peering inside, she saw a maze of wires, tubes, and components unlike anything she'd encountered before. It was intimidating, yes, but also thrilling. This wasn't just a challenge, it was an opportunity to prove herself. As Langley and his crew watched skeptically, Maya rolled up her sleeves and got to work. She knew this wouldn't be easy, but she also knew one thing for certain. She wouldn't give up without a fight. After all, she carried her father's legacy with her, and she intended to make him proud. The garage was eerily quiet as Maya stood in front of the Ferrari, her heart pounding with a mix of excitement and nerves. The sleek red supercar gleamed under the fluorescent lights, its polished surface reflecting every detail of the room. It was a masterpiece of engineering, a machine that most people could only dream of owning. But for Maya, it wasn't about the car's beauty or its price tag. It was about the challenge hidden beneath its hood. She took a deep breath, reminding herself why she was here, to honor her father's legacy, to prove her worth, and to silence the doubters who thought she didn't belong in this world. Langley leaned against a nearby workbench, arms crossed, his expression smug. Go ahead, he said, his tone laced with mockery. Show us what you've got. Maya ignored him, focusing instead on the task at hand. She grabbed a flashlight from her toolbox and began inspecting the engine compartment. At first glance, it looked like chaos, a tangled web of wires, hoses, and electronic components crammed into a space barely big enough to fit them all. Most mechanics would have been overwhelmed, but Maya had spent years learning how to break down complex problems into manageable pieces. Her father had taught her that every machine, no matter how intricate, followed a set of rules. If you understood those rules, you could find the solution. As she examined the engine, she noticed something unusual. Faint scorch marks near one of the wiring harnesses. They were subtle, almost invisible unless you knew exactly where to look. But they caught her attention immediately. Scorch marks usually meant heat damage, which could indicate an electrical issue. She made a mental note of it and continued her inspection, moving methodically from one section of the engine bay to the next. Next, she spotted something else. Tiny scratches on the surface of certain bolts and brackets. These weren't normal. Wear and tear marks, they were too precise, too deliberate. Someone had been tinkering with these parts recently, probably trying to diagnose the problem themselves. That told Maya two things. Whoever had worked on the car before hadn't found the root cause, and their attempts might have made things worse. Her eyes then landed on the hybrid system, the car's defining feature. This particular model combined a traditional combustion engine with advanced electric motors, creating a seamless blend of power and efficiency. But it also introduced a level of complexity that few mechanics dared to tackle. As Maya studied the setup, she noticed an odd pattern in the way the wiring connected the battery pack to the control unit. Something about it felt off. She couldn't quite put her finger on it yet, but her instincts told her this was important. Behind her, Langley's crew exchanged skeptical glances. One of them muttered loud enough for everyone to hear, "She doesn't even know what she's looking at." Maya pretended not to hear. She was used to comments like that by now. Growing up as the daughter of a mechanic, she'd faced plenty of doubt and criticism, especially from those who thought women shouldn't be working with tools. But she'd learned early on that proving people wrong wasn't about arguing. It was about results. So she kept her focus sharp, tuning out the noise around her. After several minutes of careful observation, Maya decided to take a closer look at the car's onboard computer. Modern vehicles relied heavily on software to manage everything from fuel injection to braking systems. and the Ferrari was no exception. Using a diagnostic tool borrowed from Langley's team, she plugged it into the car's port and began scanning for errors. The screen lit up with lines of code and technical jargon, but Maya didn't flinch. She'd spent countless hours teaching herself how to read these reports, poring over manuals and online forums late into the night. What she saw confirmed her suspicions. There was a glitch in the system, causing communication breakdowns between the car's various components. Still, the problem wasn't fully clear. The error codes pointed to multiple areas, making it hard to pinpoint the exact source of the malfunction. Frustrated but determined, Maya stepped back to think. She remembered something her father used to say, "When you're stuck, start over, go back to basics." Taking his advice to heart, she decided to revisit each part of the engine systematically, testing connections, checking voltages, and listening for unusual sounds. It was during this process that she discovered another clue. A faint, humming noise, coming from the battery unit. To most people, it would have sounded like nothing more than background static, but to Maya, it was significant. Batteries shouldn't hum, not unless something was wrong. She opened the access panel carefully, revealing rows of lithium-ion cells packed tightly together. A quick voltage test revealed that one of the cells was slightly overheating, likely due to a short circuit somewhere in the system. By now, Langley had grown impatient. "Well?" he demanded, stepping forward. "Are you done playing detective yet? Or are you going to admit you can't fix it?" Maya straightened up, wiping her hands on a rag. "I'm not done," she replied firmly. "But I've found a few things that need further investigation." "Oh, really?" Langley sneered. "Like what?" "For starters," Maya explained, pointing to the scorch marks, "there's evidence of heat damage near the wiring harness. That suggests an electrical overload. Then there's the humming noise from the battery unit, which indicates a potential short circuit. And finally, the diagnostic scan shows conflicting signals between the car's hybrid system and its control module. All of these point to a deeper issue, one that hasn't been addressed yet." To her surprise, one of Langley's mechanics nodded slowly. "You know, she's right. We never checked the battery unit. We assumed it was fine since it still held a charge." Langley shot him a glare, clearly annoyed that someone on his team was siding with Maya. "Fine," he snapped. "Keep digging if you must, but don't waste my time." Maya didn't respond. She was already back to work, her mind racing with possibilities. Each new discovery brought her closer to solving the puzzle, but it also raised more questions. Why hadn't anyone else noticed these issues? Was it because they lacked experience with hybrid systems, or had they simply given up too quickly? Whatever the reason, Maya knew she couldn't afford to make the same mistake. For her, failure wasn't an option, not when so much was riding on this moment. Hours passed and the garage grew quieter as the day wore on. Langley eventually left, muttering something about wasting resources, but Maya barely noticed. She was in her element now, completely absorbed in the challenge before her. Every wire she traced, every connection she tested, brought her one step closer to unraveling the mystery of the Ferrari's impossible engine. And though she still didn't have all the answers, she could feel the pieces starting to come together. Somewhere in this intricate maze of technology lay the solution, and Maya was determined to find it. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the garage floor, Maya sat on a stool, her hands resting on her knees. She had been at it for hours, poring over every inch of the Ferrari's engine, running test after test, and yet the solution still eluded her. The weight of the challenge pressed down on her shoulders. Langley's mocking words echoed in her mind, "Don't waste my time." But it wasn't just his skepticism that fueled her determination. It was the memory of her father standing in this very garage years ago, teaching her how to hold a wrench for the first time. He had always told her, "When you hit a wall, don't stop. That's where the real learning begins." Maya took a deep breath and shook off her doubts. She grabbed a notebook from her bag and started jotting down everything she had discovered so far. Scorch marks near the wiring harness, overheating battery cells, conflicting signals between the hybrid system and the control module. Each clue pointed to an electrical issue, but the exact cause remained hidden. She stared at the page, tapping, her pen against the paper, trying to connect the dots. Her thoughts drifted back to her father's old workshop manuals, stacked neatly on a shelf at home. Those books had been her companions through countless late nights, helping her understand the intricacies of engines most people wouldn't dare touch. She remembered one particular chapter about hybrid vehicles, a section her father had highlighted, heavily. It talked about how software updates could sometimes create conflicts within a car's systems, especially if the manufacturer didn't account for custom modifications or aftermarket parts. Could that be what was happening here? The idea sparked something in her mind. She pulled out her phone and began searching for information about the Ferrari's recent service history. After a few minutes of digging, she found what she was looking for: a firmware update released by the manufacturer just weeks before the car broke down. According to online forums, several owners had reported issues with their cars after installing the update. Some complained of erratic performance, while others mentioned complete system failures. It seemed plausible that the update had caused the problem, but proving it would require more than speculation. Maya glanced at the clock. It was well past midnight and the garage was empty except for her and the silent Ferrari. Her stomach growled, reminding her that she hadn't eaten since lunch. For a moment she considered calling it a night, but the thought of leaving the puzzle unsolved felt unbearable. Instead, she rummaged through her toolbox, pulling out a thermos of coffee she'd brought earlier. Taking a sip, she refocused her energy on the task ahead. She decided to dig deeper into the car's onboard computer. Using the diagnostic tool again, she accessed the log files stored in the system. These logs recorded every action the car's electronics performed, from ignition sequences to sensor readings. As she scrolled through the data, one entry caught her eye: a time-stamped error message indicating a failed synchronization attempt between the electric motor and the combustion engine. This happened shortly after the firmware update was installed. Bingo. But understanding the problem was only half the battle. Fixing it would be another challenge entirely. Maya knew that simply reverting the update wouldn't solve the issue. It might even make things worse. The corrupted software had already affected the car's delicate balance, and undoing it without addressing the underlying damage could lead to catastrophic failure. She needed a different approach. Her mind raced as she brainstormed solutions. What if she could bypass the faulty update altogether? If she rewired the system to isolate the problematic components, she might be able to stabilize the car until the manufacturer released a permanent fix. It was risky, unconventional, and required precision, but it was worth a shot. Feeling a surge of adrenaline, Maya sprang into action. She grabbed a set of tools and began dismantling the wiring harness connected to the hybrid system. Working, carefully she traced each wire back to its source, labeling them meticulously to avoid confusion later. Then, using spare parts salvaged from her father's collection, she fashioned a makeshift circuit board designed to reroute power away from the damaged sections. Her hands moved quickly, guided by years of practice and instinct. As she worked, memories of her father flooded her mind. She remembered the countless evenings they'd spent side by side in the garage, tinkering with old engines and laughing over shared victories. He had always encouraged her to think outside the box, to trust her instincts even when others doubted her. Now, more than ever, she felt his presence beside her, cheering her on. By the time she finished assembling the new circuit, the first rays of dawn were peeking through the garage windows. Exhausted but exhilarated, Maya double-checked her work, ensuring every connection was secure. Then, with trembling hands, she turned the key in the ignition. For a moment, there was nothing but silence. Her heart sank, fear gripping her chest. Had she made a mistake? Was the car beyond saving? But then, slowly, the engine roared to life. A smooth, powerful purr filled the air, sending shivers down her spine. The dashboard lit up, displaying no warning lights or error messages. Against all odds, she had done it. Tears welled up in Maya's eyes as she stepped back to admire her handiwork. The Ferrari was alive again, its sleek body gleaming under the morning light. She couldn't believe it herself. All those hours of frustration, self-doubt, and relentless effort had paid off. And not just for her father, whose legacy lived on in every bolt she tightened and every wire she soldered. Before she could fully process what had happened, the sound of clapping startled her. Turning around, she saw Langley standing in the doorway, his arms crossed and a look of disbelief on his face. Behind him, several of his mechanics had gathered, their expressions ranging from awe to admiration. "Well, I'll be damned," Langley muttered, shaking his head. "You actually did it." Maya straightened up, meeting his gaze with quiet confidence. "I told you I could figure it out." Langley opened his mouth to respond, but no words came out. For once, he was speechless. The garage was quiet except for the steady hum of the Ferrari's engine, a sound so smooth and powerful it felt like music. Maya stood beside the car, her hands still trembling slightly from the adrenaline rush of success. She had done it. She had fixed the impossible engine that had stumped even the most experienced mechanics. But as she looked at Langley standing in the doorway, his arms crossed and his face unreadable, she braced herself for whatever came next. Would he congratulate her? Mock her again? Or simply dismiss her achievement as luck? Langley stepped closer, his polished shoes clicking against the concrete floor. He circled the Ferrari slowly, inspecting it as if searching for flaws. Finally, he stopped near the driver's side door and turned to face Maya. "All right," he said, his voice low but measured. "Explain it to me. How did you do it?" Maya took a deep breath. She knew this moment was important, not just for her pride, but for proving that her solution wasn't a fluke. "It started with the diagnostic scan," she began, speaking clearly and confidently. "I found conflicting signals between the hybrid system and the control module. That led me to investigate the firmware update the manufacturer released recently. Turns out it caused a synchronization issue between the electric motor and the combustion engine." She paused, watching Langley's expression shift from skepticism to curiosity. Encouraged, she continued. "Once I identified the problem, I realized reverting the update wouldn't fix everything. It would have left the car unstable. So instead, I rewired the system to bypass the faulty components temporarily. I built a custom circuit board using parts salvaged from my dad's workshop. It reroutes power away from the damaged sections while keeping the rest of the system functional until the manufacturer releases a permanent patch." Langley raised an eyebrow. "A custom circuit board? You made that yourself?" "Yes," Maya replied firmly. "I didn't have time to wait for new parts, and I knew exactly what needed to be done. My dad always taught me to adapt when things don't go according to plan. This was no different." For a long moment, Langley didn't say anything. He just stared at her, his sharp eyes scanning her face as if trying to decide whether to believe her or not. Then, unexpectedly, he nodded. "Impressive," he admitted grudgingly. "Most mechanics wouldn't have thought of that. Hell, I wouldn't have thought of that." His words caught Maya off guard. She hadn't expected praise from him, let alone acknowledgement of her skill. But before she could respond, one of his crew members stepped forward. "Boss," the mechanic said hesitantly, "she's right about the firmware update. We've been hearing rumors online about other cars having similar issues. If we'd known sooner, maybe." Langley cut him off with a wave of his hand. "Enough. The point is, she figured it out when none of us could." He turned back to Maya, his tone softer now. "Look, kid, I'll admit I underestimated you. When I saw you walk in here with grease-stained jeans and calloused hands, I thought you were just some amateur playing around in her daddy's garage. But you proved me wrong." Maya felt a flicker of satisfaction but kept her emotions in check. "I'm not doing this to prove anyone wrong," she said evenly. "I'm doing it because I love fixing things, because it's what my dad taught me to do, and because I refuse to let anyone tell me I can't." Langley studied her for a moment longer, then nodded again. "Fair enough. Listen, I owe you an apology for doubting you, for mocking you, for all of it. You earned your place here today, and I respect that." Maya blinked, surprised by the sincerity in his voice. For someone who had seemed so arrogant and dismissive, just hours ago this admission was unexpected and oddly satisfying. "Thank you," she said simply. But Langley wasn't finished. "Here's the thing," he continued. "This dealership gets cars like this all the time. Luxury imports, hybrids, electrics, you name it. Stuff that breaks down in ways most mechanics can't handle. What do you say we make a deal? Whenever we run into problems like this, you come in and help us sort them out. Name your price." Maya froze. This was the last thing she had anticipated. A partnership offer. From Langley, of all people. On one hand, it was tempting. The exposure and resources could take her career to the next level. On the other hand, she knew accepting would mean working under someone else's roof, following their rules. After everything she'd been through to keep her father's legacy alive, giving up control didn't sit well with her. "I appreciate the offer," she said carefully, choosing her words. "But my heart's in my own garage. It's where I grew up, where my dad worked every day of his life. I want to build something there, to create a space where people like me can learn and grow without being told they don't belong." Langley frowned, clearly disappointed but not entirely surprised. "I see," he said after a pause. "Well, if you change your mind, you know where to find me." Maya smiled faintly. "Thanks, but I think I'll stick with my plans for now." As Langley and his team filed out of the garage, leaving her alone with the Ferrari, Maya leaned against the workbench and exhaled deeply. Her body ached from hours of labor, and her mind buzzed with exhaustion and triumph. She had faced down doubt, mockery, and an impossible challenge, and she had come out on top. But more than anything, she had honored her father's memory by proving that skill and determination could overcome any obstacle. Word of Maya's achievement spread quickly. By mid-morning, customers began showing up at Johnson's Auto Repair, eager to meet the mechanic who had tamed the untamable Ferrari. Some were longtime clients returning after months of absence. Others were newcomers drawn by the buzz. Reporters from local newspapers arrived too, asking questions and snapping photos of Maya standing proudly beside her tools. One headline read, "Local mechanic proves herself against all odds." Despite the attention, Maya stayed grounded. She spent the rest of the day catching up on overdue repairs, answering calls and fielding inquiries about future projects. Every time someone congratulated her or thanked her for her work, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. This wasn't just about fixing cars anymore. It was about inspiring others to chase their dreams no matter how daunting they seemed. That evening, as the sun set and the garage emptied out, Maya sat on a stool, staring at the shelves lined with her father's old manuals and tools. She thought about how far she'd come since losing him, the struggles, the doubts, the victories, and she thought about the road ahead, filled with endless possibilities. Her phone buzzed, pulling her from her thoughts. It was a text from her best friend Lisa. "Heard about the Ferrari, you're amazing. Want to grab dinner tomorrow, my treat." Maya chuckled, typing back a quick response. "Sure thing, but only if you promise not to call me miracle worker again." As she closed her phone and locked up the garage for the night, she allowed herself a small smile. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, and new engines to fix. And Maya Johnson was ready for all of it. The days following Maya's triumph with the Ferrari felt like a whirlwind. The small-town mechanic who had once been underestimated was now the talk of the town, and beyond. Local news outlets couldn't get enough of her story, dubbing her the miracle mechanic and highlighting how she had taken on an impossible challenge and emerged victorious. Social media buzzed with posts about her achievement, and soon, people from neighboring cities were driving hours just to have their cars serviced at Johnson's Auto Repair. Maya's phone rang nonstop with inquiries, job offers, and even interview requests from national magazines. It was overwhelming, but in the best possible way. Despite the sudden fame, Maya stayed true to herself and her roots. Every morning, she arrived at the garage before sunrise, coffee in hand, ready to tackle whatever challenges awaited her. She turned down lucrative partnership deals and flashy sponsorship offers, choosing instead to focus on expanding her father's legacy. Her dream wasn't to become a celebrity or run a high-end dealership. It was to create a space where young women like her could learn, grow, and thrive in a field that had long excluded them. With the influx of new customers came financial stability, allowing Maya to invest in upgrading the garage. She installed state-of-the-art diagnostic equipment, added more lifts to handle bigger projects, and transformed a dusty corner of the shop into a training area. There, she began hosting workshops for aspiring mechanics, particularly young women, who wanted to break into the industry. She taught them everything she knew: how to diagnose engine problems, how to weld, how to rebuild transmissions, and encouraged them to trust their instincts. "Don't let anyone tell you you're not good enough," Maya often said during these sessions. "If I can fix $1 million Ferrari, you can do anything you set your mind to." Her students adored her. They saw her not just as a teacher, but as a role model, a living example of what perseverance and passion could achieve. One of her first pupils, a shy teenager named Sarah, struggled with self-confidence at first, but under Maya's guidance she blossomed, eventually landing an internship at a prestigious auto repair shop. When Sarah hugged Maya goodbye on her last day of training, tears streaming down her face, Maya felt a surge of pride. This was why she did what she did, not for recognition, but to empower others. As months passed, Johnson's Auto Repair became more than just a garage. It became a community hub. Customers lingered after dropping off their cars, chatting with Maya about their lives while sipping coffee brewed in the shop's tiny kitchenette. Parents brought their kids to watch Maya work, hoping to spark an interest in engineering or mechanics. Even Langley stopped by occasionally, though his visits were less condescending and more appreciative these days. He'd drop off parts or ask for advice on tricky repairs, always leaving with a nod of respect. One crisp autumn morning, Maya stood in front of a classroom filled with eager faces. She had partnered with a local vocational school to launch a formal program aimed at training the next generation of female mechanics. The students ranged in age from teenagers to women in their 40s, each with their own reasons for wanting to learn. Some sought independence, others a fresh start, and a few simply loved cars as much as Maya did. "Today," Maya began, smiling warmly at her class, "we're going to talk about hybrid systems. These are some of the most advanced engines out there, and they're only getting more complex. But don't worry, we'll take it step by step. Remember, every problem has a solution if you listen closely enough." She spent the next hour explaining the basics of hybrid technology, using diagrams and real-life examples to make the concepts accessible. Then, she led the students outside, where a donated hybrid sedan sat waiting. Together, they opened the hood and began exploring its inner workings. Maya watched with satisfaction as light bulbs went off in her students' eyes, their excitement palpable. After the lesson, one of the older students, a woman named Elena, approached Maya. "Thank you," she said earnestly. "I've always been told I'm too old to start something new, but being here, it makes me feel like I can still chase my dreams." Maya placed a reassuring hand on Elena's shoulder. "You absolutely can. Age doesn't define your potential. Look at me. I didn't know anything about hybrids until a few years ago. You just have to be willing to learn." Elena smiled, gratitude shining in her eyes. "You're inspiring, you know that?" Maya laughed softly. "Nah, I'm just doing what I love. If that inspires people, then great." Years later, Maya found herself standing in the same spot where her journey had begun, all grown up, yet deeply connected to her roots. The little garage her father had built was now a thriving institution, complete with multiple bays, classrooms, and even a small museum dedicated to automotive history. Photos of Marcus adorned the walls alongside awards Maya had received over the years, including a prestigious honor from a national trade organization recognizing her contributions to diversity in the automotive industry. But the greatest reward wasn't trophies or accolades, it was seeing the impact she had made. Former students ran successful garages of their own, some specializing in electric vehicles, others excelling in classic car restoration. Women who had once doubted themselves now walked with confidence, armed with tools and knowledge they never thought they'd possess. And everywhere she went, Maya heard stories of how her determination had inspired others to believe in themselves. On quiet evenings, when the garage was empty and the hum of engines had faded, Maya would sit alone in the workshop, surrounded by memories. She'd think about her father, his laughter echoing in her mind as he handed her a wrench for the first time. She'd think about the Ferrari, the challenge that had changed everything. And she'd think about all the lives she had touched along the way. Her story had started with loss and doubt, but it had transformed into something extraordinary. Through grit, creativity, and unwavering belief in herself, Maya Johnson had not only fixed an impossible engine, she had ignited a revolution. And as she closed the garage door for the night, locking up the place that had been her home for so many years, she knew one thing for certain. Her father would have been proud.